Hello everyone. Today I prepared a walkthrough video to solve some practice questions. We have 6 questions in total. Let me start with question 1. Question 1 is not a coding question. It is a code output question. We have equals 17 and b equals 5. Two variables are defined and we are given several print statements below. At the bottom, it also says, briefly explain what each operator does. I will not write the explanation part. Instead, I'll explain it verbally. So we have 17 and 5. The percent sign is the modulo operator. When we divide 17 by 5, it gives us the remainder. 17 divided by 5. The remainder is 2. The double slash operator is floor division. We divide 17 by 5 and write only the quotient. Floor division drops the decimal part. Normally 17 divided by 5 gives 3.4. But with floor division, we only keep the integer part. So the answer is we have a double asterisk, also written as star star, followed by 2. This means the double asterisk is the exponentiation operator. Let me explain. It works like this, a 2 to the power of 2. If the exponent were 3, it would be a cube. If it were 4, it would be a to the power of 4. That is the system. So here, do we know a? Yes, it is 17. 17 squared equals 289. Then we have it divided by b with a single slash. Since it is a single slash, we write the full result of the division. This is regular division. The result is 3.4. As I mentioned, 17 divided by 5 gives 3.4. The last line asks for the type of the result. What is the type of a floor divided by b? In other words, what data type is it? Is it an integer, since we use, or is it a float? Floor division, even if 17 divided by 5 gives 3.4, it is stored as 3. It is converted to an integer. Even if the result were 3.8, the answer would still be 3. Because it does not wrap an integer. It simply cuts the decimal point. It moves everything to the right of the decimal point. So the type here is int. Now I move on to question 2. Question 2 is a coding question. Since it is a coding question, I will write the code. First of all, what does it ask for? Length and width. Both should be read as integers. Arrow. Length is called A and width is called B. Let's write it. 8 wide sign, then in, write A, then input. Inside the input, I'll add a prompt. Let's say enter length, and then do the same for B. If you wonder why we write int on the left of input, here is the reason. The input function always returns a string, but we need an integer, not a string. So we wrap it with int to convert the string to an integer. Now the formulas are already given to us. First I calculate the perimeter. I define a variable called perimeter and set it to 2 times ability. You can write it either way. Both forms are correct. Either is fine. Then I calculate the area. To go a bit faster, let me just type it. I type area, then diagonal, and then write it like this. There is one more value needed at the bottom. Let me check what it is. Diagonal. The formula is given. The diagonal formula is a squared plus b squared to the power of 0.5. This is just the Pythagorean theorem. Arrow, that's it. Since the formula is written directly, I will just type it as given. And then print all 3 values. Let me run it now. Hit run. I enter 6 for length and 4 for width. The output is perimeter 20, area 24, diagonal 7.21, data. All correct. Now question 3 times. I cleared the previous code. What does question 3 ask for? It asks us to build an if-else structure. Arrow. Dot. Let's do it. First of all, let me do this. We read the year as an integer. It needs to be an integer. Yes, because it is a year. Arrow. Dot. I write year input enter year. Good. Now the conditions start. We handle the input. Good. Now let's write the condition. We write if year is less than or equal to 0. Something is already starting to appear. Let me continue. Less than or equal to 0. Less than or equal. So, if year over here it is less than or equal to. Here's how we write it. We call print. We print invalid year. The question says to print invalid year. So let's do that. I copy the text and paste it. Done with that condition. Now the second condition. I write a leaf. We check divisibility by 400 first. If the year is divisible by 400, it is a leap year. We print leap year. Let's write it. Like this. Done. We said leap year. When divisible by 400, it is a leap year. Now why do we check 400 before 100? Because of how a leaf works. Order matters. If we checked 100 first, years like 2000 would incorrectly match that condition. So let me restructure the conditions properly. The correct order is first check 400, then 100, then 4. First, it checks divisibility by 400. If divisible by 400, if it is, we print leap year. Leap year. Then, if not divisible by 400, is it divisible by 100? If yes, not a leap year. We print accordingly. Then we check divisibility by 4. We write a leaf. Year modulo 4 equals 0 times. If true, everything else leap year, we use else. Not a leap year. Yes. Exactly. The else block handles all remaining cases. Not a leap year. Arrow. Let's run it. Let's test it now. Let's enter -5. It prints invalid year. Let's enter 2024. It correctly prints leap year. 2024 should indeed be a leap year. Now let's make sure 1900 does not say leap year. We need to be careful about this. We must not forget the condition for 100. Without it, the logic breaks, because we need to add that condition properly. Let's make sure we add it. Arrow. We tested 1900. Then we tested 2000. Now let's move to question 4. Question 4 does not ask us to write code. It asks us to trace the output. I cleared the code. I have my pen ready. Now I want to explain question 4. Quickly. Here. You are asked to trace what happens at each step. We have a loop. Where does it start? It starts from 1. Is 1 included? Is 9 included? No. So what does that mean? From 1 to 8. 8 is included, but 9 is not. Now we check. If I modulo 2 is not equal to 0, this means if I is not divisible by 2. What does that tell us? If a number is not divisible by 2, the remainder is 1. That means it is an odd number. So we only process odd numbers. Arrow, but result plus equals I times I, so we square I and add it to the result. And we also update the print statement to show I squared. The F-string format is used here. This is for formatted output. So the program tells us at each step, I want to Accumulate the sum of squared values and print them step by step. Is it a hard question? Not really. A bit tedious to trace. A little, but the key is understanding what is being computed. I will say it quickly. I am writing this down. This means done. The sum of the squares of all odd numbers between 1 and 8. That is what this program computes. Now let me also show the full output. We can run the code and verify. Here is the output. Understanding the logic is more important than memorizing the output. What exactly does this code do? By the way, there is an indentation error here. This error is caused by incorrect indentation. I am showing this intentionally in Python. Indentation is very important in Python. Tap spaces and regular. For example, if you mix them incorrectly, Python throws an error. Be careful with that. This is an important point. Look, 35, 8, 1, 4, 10. Why does result accumulate like this? We add 1 squared on 1. Then 1 plus 3 squared gives 1 plus 9 equals. Then we add 5 squared, okay, 25. 10 plus 25 equals. Think of it 35 as an accumulation 35 over iteration squared. There are 35, so the final result is 84. Now we move to question 5. Question 5 is purely a coding question. It is a question that tests whether you know how to use nested loop. The question says we must use nested for loop. It says, do not write literal numbers inside print. Okay, we will not write literal numbers. You could do it that way, but we will not. Agreed. Is the range clear? Yes. The outer loop goes from 1 to 5. I write 5, and I move on. Now the inner loop. Inside the inner loop, we do not use a fixed number. What do we use? We use as the range. The inner range is range. Do you understand why? By the way, you can use an underscore as the loop variable in the inner loop if you are not using it. This is a common convention to show that the variable is intentionally unused. Use this. It is cleaner, easy to read. Now we need to open the inner for loop. The question already gives a hint. It says, the outer loop controls the row. The inner loop controls how many times to print. The inner loop controls how many times the number is repeated on that row. Arrow. I write, put J in range. Now inside, what is the range? What happens with range? Because it has to match. What is the range? Row 1 prints once, row 2 prints twice, row 3 3 times, row 4 4 number of repetitions equals the value of I. That is why I used range. Now we need to write the print statement. We print inside the inner loop. And we use end to print on the same line. Think of it this way. J goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But it is not the value of J we print. The value we print is I. I is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in the outer loop. It changes more slowly. It stays the same for each inner iteration. For example, when I is 5, but the inner loop itself is not printed 5, 5. J goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But we print I, which is 5. We only use J to count how many times to print. Let's see. Let me run it. After each row is done, can we move to the next line? Print with MDA keeps everything on the same line. Let me run it first. This is what you get. But the question asks for each row on a separate line. It wants each row on its own line. So after the inner loop, I write print with nothing inside. If you wonder what print does on its own, it exists. It is essentially a way to move to the next line. When we do this, look, the pattern comes out correctly. Now I move to our last question. Question 6 uses a while loop. After the for loop, we now look at the while loop. The while loop says, add all numbers divisible by 3, and multiply all numbers not divisible by 3. It also includes an extra condition. The initial value of the product should be 1. The reason we initialize the product to 1 is important. The identity element for multiplication is 1. Because if you start from 0, multiplying by 0 always gives 0. So if you start from 0, no matter what you multiply, the result will always be 0. That is why we initialize it to 1. I will try to solve question 6 quickly. I need to do 2 things first. First, make potassium seroproduktavama. I also define 2 Boolean variables, Haas multiple and Haas non-multiple. Why use while true? Because the question says the loop ends when the user enters 0 or a negative number. So I will do it like this. I write if. Of course, before that we need to read the number inside the loop. We must define the number inside the loop. If we define it outside, it only gets assigned 1. If the input is outside the loop will keep repeating the same value forever. It reads once outside and then loops forever with that same value. We would have to force quit the program, because the loop would never end. So I write the input inside the loop. I write input inside the loop. Then I write if energy T0 break. We break out of the loop. We exit. The reason we use break is our true loops forever. It only stops when we explicitly break. The moment we hit the break statement, the loop ends. As I said, the break statement terminates the while loop immediately. Now continuing. What was next? Arrow. If n is divisible by 3, we add it to total. Saw someone set Haas multiple to true. Otherwise, we go to the else block, because we are handling the case where it is not divisible by 3. I write product times an n. Wait, wrong. We write product in n. And I also set Haas non-multiple to true. I wrote it like this. I opened the if block. I closed it. I finished the structure. Done. Now after the loop, we check Haas multiple and Haas non-multiple and print accordingly. Yes. Now we need to test it. Let's test it. Look, this is our result. You can add a colon after the label to make it look cleaner. Overall, question 6 is not that difficult once you understand the logic. By the way, we did not have a question 7. We only had 6 questions. The question already gives us the rules. We are told exactly what to do. A sample output is provided, and we simply follow it. That's it, everyone. Thank you for watching.